Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday morning, which means it's time for yet another episode of Salty Saturdays. I am your host, Matthew Cadis, the beleaguered producer of the Salty Nerd podcast. We got a lot of fun discussion topics we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about podcast movement versus Ben Shapiro, She-Hulk getting review bombed, the WB running out of money and going anti-woke, the Saints Row reboot, and a bunch of other stuff. But with me, as always, is an expert panel of nerds that I am very excited to get to introduce here. With me, as always, is Matt Vader 74. How you doing, buddy?
Okay, so first off, I'm not an expert in anything. It really bothers me that you refer to me as such.
You're an expert in annoying me.
I am. I'm an expert at drinking really bad coffee. Yeah, happy to be here, buddy. And I'm really happy that this is the first time this show is not a complete and total sausage fest. And I'm very, very pleased about this. So yes, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
And speaking of experts, we have Brian the Popcast, who is an expert in all things merchandise and Star Trek. How you doing?
And failing.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And as Vader mentioned, we have the lovely ladies from Force of Light Entertainment with us today, which is Michelle and Natalie. How you doing?
Doing good. I want to hear what we're an expert in.
Yeah.
You're an expert in breaking up the sausage fest. That is Salty Saturdays. But you guys have a really great channel. Why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you can find us at Force of Light Entertainment on YouTube. We do a lot of reactions, trailers, and old movies that we've not seen, or not even, some of them aren't even that old, just haven't seen, and then movie reviews. But yeah, check us out at Force of Light Entertainment.
And by the way, the links to everyone's stuff is in the description. So if you like one of our panelists, go check out the description to check out their YouTube channel or Patreon or whatever it may be. And last but not least, Kamran Pasha, the other half of the anti-Birds of Prey dynamic duo. How you doing, buddy? Thanks for being here.
Thank you. That was when Twitter started flagging me. When you and I stood up against the Birds of Prey and actually said, I don't think this movie looks good, and all of Twitter came after us. That's when Twitter noticed me, and that's why I'm no longer there. So,
as we know now, all those Birds of Prey accounts that attacked us were just bot accounts from Zack Snyder's PR firm, right?
Yep. It worked.
It worked, but
actually did not work. Nobody went to see it. But I'm honored to be here. And Brian, I don't know that I've ever been on a podcast with you. Matt Vader, I've certainly seen you around, but I don't know. Have we been on a casting? I think maybe once. Maybe
once. Yeah.
Maybe once. And Force of Light, these lovely ladies, I've been on their channel several times. So if anyone's not subscribing, it's one of the best channels out there. You've got to subscribe to their channel. Aside from that, they're incredibly lovely. They're actually very intelligent and have very interesting insights to offer, and do not shy from sharing their opinions. So.
Thank you, Cameron.
Yes, thank you, Cameron. We always enjoy having you on.
Yes.
Yeah, and speaking of interesting insights, so for those of you who aren't familiar with Cameron, he's a movie producer and a very talented writer. The guy has excellent opinions and taste in movies and TV shows. I've known him for quite some time, and I'm very pleased that he agreed to come on today's episode, because his knowledge of how Hollywood works is very similar to like my experience in it. And I'm looking forward to hearing his take on some of the things we're going to be talking about. And we've got a lot of anti-woke versus woke stuff to talk about in today's episode. But before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone in the chat that any super chats that you guys want to throw our way, not only does it go towards supporting the show, and we really appreciate them, but we will stop the show and read them and talk about them. But Matt Vader will be monitoring the chat as we go along. And with that being said, I just want to give a quick shout out to the people in the chat. Anthony Mark, one of our super fans. Thank you for being here, Anthony. Love you. Joker Voice, hashtag keep talking. Anima Confusa, our resident trivia champion. Good to see you. Mr. Farnsworth is here. Good to see you, Mr. Farnsworth. We got Tom from Midnight's Edge After Dark, who's a good friend of the podcast. He has us on his stream quite often, so we thank him for that. Orwell's Son, Dr. Dragon, R to the Icky, Andre Enrico, Quantum Cat 76. Thank you all for being here this morning, and the Rogue Attraction. Thank you guys for being in the chat. We really appreciate you being here and participating. And of course, Danny's mom, Penny, just showed up. Thank you all for being here. But enough of all the pleasantries. Let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is Ben Shapiro and this little thing called the podcast movement. Now, for those of you who might not be aware of what happened here. So me and Matt Vader actually went to a podcast movement meetup out here in Las Vegas, and this is like the big industry like seminar event for podcasters. Where like they put on 2 events a year, one in LA and one somewhere else, usually somewhere in Texas. And it's this huge event for podcasters to come and network and learn about how to, get bigger into podcasting and all this other stuff. And I actually considered going out to the Dallas one that was going on this week. But I decided, it's too much of a hassle, so just decided to stay home. But the interesting thing here is that Ben Shapiro, who runs the biggest political podcast in the world, and his company Daily Wire is like the 6th biggest podcasting production company in the world, they got a booth at Podcast Movement, and Ben Shapiro showed up at the booth like just as an attendee. Like he wasn't speaking, he wasn't doing any panels or anything. He just showed up because like his company had a booth there, and he checked it out. And he was there for all of like, I don't know, like an hour maybe. And people started complaining that they didn't feel safe with him being around. And so Podcast Movement, the company that put on this thing and sold booth space to Daily Wire and all this stuff, issued an apology on Twitter for the fact that Ben Shapiro just existed at their at their convention, and this caused a huge backlash against the company. Yeah. And in fact, Daily Wire even put out this video of what actually happened when Ben Shapiro showed up. And if you watch this video on their thing, it's literally just him at the booth taking pictures with people and shaking hands.
Terrifying footage.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's I'm so scared right now.
Yeah, he's like 5'2", like, and he's just walking around. He's not preaching anything. He's not giving speeches.
This isn't as fun as the AVN Awards.
I know, right?
In Las Vegas, right? That's a lot more interesting than this.
Exactly. So they kind of had this write-up, and me and Vader, we actually met the organizers of like the guys who run this company, the podcast meetup, and we thought like, hey, they were cool guys, they were cool with us, but this, I mean, like you would think that that apologizing for having one of the biggest podcasters in the world at a podcasting seminar would be like dumb, right? Like you would want to have people of Ben Shapiro's caliber at your podcasting seminar. So I wanted to get your guys' take on this. Vader, let's start with you, since we're both podcasters and we know the guys who put on this event and stuff like that. What's your take on this? So
first of all, the little event that we went to, they have these little events that they set up in like cities that build up to these things just for networking. We went to a bar that was attached to a barbecue place. Probably 50 people showed up, and it was a fun little thing. Met some people, networked, kind of like the meetups that Nerdrotic does, and and things like that. Just new people, and it was fun. But this thing, dang man, I kind of want to like dress up as Ben Shapiro for Halloween this year. I could be
He's the scariest thing on the planet.
It's the scariest thing in the world, right? Because all these nut jobs are just trying to make an example out of him, I guess, and when you look at it, it was really just one goofy dude that I could find that made a I mean, I'm sure there was more than one, but I saw one in particular that that complained about him being there, and of course it was one of these weird blue-haired, shaved head persons that are confused about how they were born, and it was weird. So I really don't understand their reaction, apologizing for the big scary man at the booth for 20 minutes taking pictures with a couple fans. It was very strange, but man, they got ratioed straight to heck, right?
Yeah, they did.
It was wild, and deservedly so. I mean, what would they have done if like Joe Rogan or somebody had showed up? The biggest podcaster in the world instead of the 5th biggest podcaster
what
in
if
the
Steve
world.
Crowder showed up, dude?
Or Crowder, or
oh my God, they would burn the place down.
Oh my God, this guy just actually legitimized our entire operation, and they throw him in the trash. Like
yeah, you know what this is the equivalent of? This is the equivalent of a Star Trek convention apologizing for William Shatner showing up.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's exactly what it's like. It's exactly what it's like.
So
Crazy.
Brian, the person who was outraged and felt unsafe from Ben Shapiro tweeted about this, and they have a total follower count of like 123, I believe. This was what Podcast Movement it was inspired to issue a statement about. So, what's your take on this? Do you think that this was like just an epic PR fail?
Oh yeah, I actually responded to your tweet. I was like, "This is terrifying footage. I don't feel safe right now. I need my wife's boyfriend to take me to my therapist." And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. And kicking one of the biggest podcasters on the planet out of your podcast convention for just being there is just.
They didn't kick him out. They just complained about it after he was gone.
They
He was only
apologized
there
for
like
him
45
being
minutes.
there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, they couldn't kick him out, but they won't make that mistake again, Matt. Remember, they said we will not. We apologize. We won't make this mistake again. You won't have the biggest podcast, one of the biggest podcasters on the planet, at your podcast convention. Okay, you're not going to be very successful with that mentality. And again, he was doing nothing but shaking hands and saying hello, the most polite possible thing ever. It made no sense whatsoever. And the user complaining about it had zero pull. In fact, them responding probably made it even more insane. They could have just ignored it and nothing would have happened.
Yep. So Michelle and Natalie, Podcast Movement was happy to take the money from Daily Wire to give them a booth. But the minute the owner of the company that they took money from shows up, they're like, "Oh, we're never going." Like we thought that this was a possibility, but we never expected it to actually happen. That he would actually show up. We're sorry. We're never going to make this mistake again. Do you think that's a little bit hypocritical that they're willing to take the company's money, but the minute that the owner of the company shows up, they start backpedaling?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think it shows they're kind of sheep people, and yeah.
Well, and sadly, this whole situation just kind of points to, again, sadly, where we are today as like a country where companies take political sides, where to me, as a business strategy, if you could get the Daily Wire there, great. If you can get whoever the biggest, more left side of the aisle podcaster is there, great. Because it's not about taking sides. It's about having having these podcast people there.
It's just truly crazy how politically
everything is.
Everything is now. Everything is politicized.
Yeah.
Which I understand he is kind of a political figure.
He is, but again, they should be able to have.
He's dangerous or making people uncomfortable just by standing there and kissing babies and hugging, or whatever.
Yes, they should have.
So come on,
should have welcomed people with open arms on both sides. If you're smart business people.
So, Cameron, that brings us to the free speech implication here. Now, in the podcasting world, it's a little bit more Wild West. You're free to kind of say whatever you want over there and not have to worry about getting shut down like you do on YouTube, because basically podcasting is decentralized. There are a lot of podcast networks out there, a lot of places where you can listen to podcasts. So it's hard to like deplatform someone on a podcasting platform. But the idea that Ben Shapiro, who runs the #1 political podcast in the world, like millions and millions of listens every single day, is some type of a liability to a podcasting seminar. The first thing you saw in response to these tweets was a lot of people who are politically aligned with Ben Shapiro, or even like left-leaning people who believe in free speech, basically came out and like, dude, what are you doing? Like you're literally like alienating like a good 50 to 60% of your user base. So what do you think are the implications of this? Is this a kind of like a shot fired across the bow for like a free speech battle in the podcasting platform? What do you think?
Well, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, as the ladies just pointed out. I mean, this is unfortunately part of the culture, and not necessarily coming from other aspects of the corporation. It's coming from all of this, and I'll reference it to Hollywood, right? And then I'll tie it into free speech as you've asked. All of this stuff is coming from the marketing PR departments, right? Because they are all their entire. It's like a bureaucracy who exists to create the problem that they're solving, right? And so they're always on the lookout for any drama that can justify their existence to put out that apology notice, right? It's like you see that in Hollywood. You'll see that where the companies will largely want something to go away, but their marketing and PR department won't let them, because they're the ones that jump into Twitter. They're the ones that we saw jumped into the birds of prey threads and all this stuff. They're definitely the ones that are so, oh my God, we have to keep the audience feeling safe. It's partly to justify their own existence within the company, right? So we've got these people that are within each of these companies. We've had recent elements like David Zaslav at Warner Brothers, and I'm sure we're going to talk about him later in this.
Yeah, my man Zaz.
Yeah, so he's been so aggressive that even the PR department, like, okay, boss, we're just gonna keep our mouth shut, right? I mean, but you have to have somebody like that at the top, and most corporations are just run by people just trying to get their very large paycheck and go home to their wife and their mistress in the place of the Hamptons, right? They don't want to deal with this stuff. But we are reaching this place where, as the ladies pointed out, culture is really breaking, and so getting to the free speech element of it, those who like to deplatform, and I was deplatformed, I was taken off of Twitter, right? And those who like to deplatform will say, well, it's a private company. They have the right to censor. And on one level, that argument is true, although one can argue that a place like Twitter has essentially become an open public forum, and it is not necessarily a traditional private company, right?
It needs a new category at this point.
Well, I mean, the analogy category would be this, that currently exists, is that, and my understanding of the law is that, you can't, a public mall can't stop people from handing out flyers at a mall, right? Because it's an open, even though it's privately owned physical space, it's considered like the town commons, right? And so that kind of analogy where Twitter's become the town commons for discourse, and only in last 3 or 4 years was it essentially taken over by this cabal of extreme Marxist activists. I was on Twitter since 2009, and then I was kicked off in 2 years ago when these guys took over and the whole culture changed. So, free speech, I'm a libertarian, so I believe everyone is free to do what they want to do. If these people are foolish enough to make this kind of thing, they got the market response, which was, so you're going to make this attack on Ben Shapiro, who I have my own issues with politically, right? But let him speak and let him come to this event. And the market responded. As you pointed out, even the liberals are like, hey, man, I don't know about this, right? So now they're getting this backlash. And so that's the joy of free speech, is that they try to shut his free speech down only to get the market's free speech back to them. And those are the pressures that are beginning to assert themselves on the industries. We're beginning to see here in Hollywood a recognition that we've gone to such an extreme sort of Maoist control of thought that it's not profitable. And I'll just give one example and then I'll shut up and let everyone talk again. Very recently, I was on a screenwriters board with some very prominent screenwriters talking about stuff about, how we're all sharing stories about how sometimes we're disconnected from the younger generation of writers. And I shared this story that I thought was funny about how I was invited to a young Muslim writers group. People may know I'm a practicing Muslim. There's not many of us in Hollywood. There were almost none when I arrived. But now there are a bunch of young kids showed up, and I was invited to this group, and I was so excited that, these young kids, the next generation. And then everyone started off, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, brothers and sisters. May Allah bless you. Everyone, please introduce yourselves and share with us your pronouns. I said, so I'm like, okay, this Muslim writers group, is everyone's sharing their pronouns, right? And so I was kind of put off by that. And I'm making joke about how I'm disconnected from these younger kids raised in this generation, even from my own tradition, who are going along with the flow of the moment in culture. And most people on the screenwriters board were laughing and joking about, that's hilarious, right? And then one partner, and I won't name him, but a very famous screenwriter, someone who has an Oscar nomination, suddenly decided to go off on me on that board, saying, well, why wouldn't you just share your pronoun? Why wouldn't you do it? You should do it. What's wrong with you? And he wouldn't stop. He was very agitated, very angry, and to the point that other screenwriters, like famous screenwriters, were texting me like, what's up with this guy, man? I mean, he's like, out of control. One after the other, he's trying to compel me to name my pronoun on this board. I'm like, you name whatever pronoun you want. I'll call. You want to call Sally? Your name is Bob yesterday, but Sally today. I'm going with it. I'm going to treat you the way you want to be treated. But leave me alone. I don't want to participate in this. I decline to state my pronoun.
There you go.
Let go of it. And then the consensus on the board was, hey, man, this is kind of outdated. That was a consensus on the lefty screenwriters board. It's kind of outdated, man.
Call me Shirley. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Yeah, now we're getting to that place where even the lefty screenwriters are like, this compelled speech phenomenon is getting old. We're feeling.
Cameron, I'm with you. I like to declare my no noun. But one of the interesting things about this is that from a free speech perspective, so Ben Shapiro wasn't even like he wasn't a guest speaker, he wasn't an invited guest, like he was not on any panels. He literally showed up as like an attendee just to kind of check out his booth, and he was attacked just for being
for existing, for his presence.
Yeah, for existing. And I want to welcome and bring in Tom Connors from Midnight's Edge to have him weigh in on this, and then we're going to get to a super chat after Tom says his speech. So Tom, welcome to Salty Saturdays yet again. Thank you for being here.
Hey.
What's your take on this whole Ben Shapiro podcast movement thing?
Well, they had a booth there, right? And you usually have to pay like fees to have a booth there, right?
Yep.
I'm sure their bank account liked his money.
The cheapest booth was $5,500, by the way.
Yeah,
Cheapest?
I mean, I'd be like, well, since you have to apologize for me being here, I apologize for my bank account not having any money in it. When you try to get, no, I know that's to pay in advance. No, I think it's redonkulous. People not feeling safe around one of the mousiest guys in the world is ridiculous. I mean, like a wind blows and it would probably knock his ass over. I mean,
why we got to pay taxes? I don't know why you're so upset with me being there. It's fine. It's fine. What's wrong with it?
You do that well.
Shake hands. Okay.
That's good.
Shit, I thought there was two of them.
Imagine if Gene had shown up as his bodyguard. Just imagine that.
Oh, that would be good.
Then they'd be really offended.
And as far as the pronoun thing, Cameron, I mean, I'd just been like, it's not my fault you have to go through life like a perpetual 4-year-old who can't, be unobsessed with what's between their legs. Because
So let's call up the super chat real quick. We can do that.
1 second. There we go.
So Joker Voice for $10. Question for everyone. How do any of you deal with normies who don't understand the woke element in Hollywood and defend these projects without coming across as a conspiracy theorist? Hashtag keep talking. Excellent question, Joker. Let's start with Tom on this one, and then we'll go around and get everyone else's thoughts on it. Tom, how do you deal with people who don't understand woke Hollywood?
Well, I am starting to run into people who are like not in the sphere or very political. We're starting to notice differences in their entertainment, let's say. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it without being aware of what they're aware of. But once you kind of explain it to people, they kind of get it pretty easily, or they've just picked up on it through social media and other ways. I mean, even the news and stuff has brought it up, right? I mean, it's pretty much just about everywhere now. It's come up in a lot of different, movies and television shows in general, just as a conversation piece. But I mean, for the conspiracy side of it, I would just show them like, where Kurtzman and some of these other people are flat out saying that they're using Star Trek as a platform to push their agenda, right? I'd show them some of the Reimagine Tomorrow videos. And at that point, if you still think it's a conspiracy, then I don't know what else to show you, right? Like you literally have people saying, we're doing this thing. It's like, see, we told you.
So, real quick, because we got a time constraint here, let's get Force of Light's opinion on this. Natalie, I know you have to go real soon, but fortunately, Michelle's able to stick it out for the long haul. So I want to hear your guys' take on this. How do you?
The sausage fest is getting worse.
Or Cameron.
Yes. So how do you guys defend our take that like politics does not have a place in entertainment to people who might not be paying attention?
Well, I think as Tom said, I think it's getting pretty easy because I think so many people the majority of people I feel like don't like it. And it's only a percentage of that type of thinking that really is good with it. And there are some that don't really see it yet. But usually I think it also helps us because we're women. So, I mean, take it, say some of the things they may put in a movie with like, say She-Hulk, different things. We can kind of speak on that as women. And I think kind of break it down very gentle where they listen. And it's kind of like Tom said, you can now point to so many videos. Look at those leaked videos of Disney, like telling people how they want to start putting all this agenda within kids' movies. So it's kind of like the wrap is out of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So most
Like
people,
the curtain is starting to fall down.
yes, there's some people who may not be bothered by it as much, but most people are pretty aware that, I mean, again, mostly the only people that truly would like defend them are people that think exactly like them at this point.
Natalie, anything else you want to say before you go on this topic?
Gosh, I don't feel the most talkative on that one, but yeah, I very much agree with what you said. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Natalie, thank you for being here today. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time to
Thank you
join us.
so much for having me. Maybe I can come back soon or something.
Oh, for sure.
Stay
You guys are
longer.
always welcome to come back.
Well,
And
yeah, thank you guys so much, and have a great panel.
Bye now.
yeah,
Thank you.
And Michelle will stay with us for the duration. Now,
She just
Cameron,
leaves.
I'm out.
it's like peace
I
out.
thought it was always like that moment of the
Deuces.
vaudeville when they pull the person off the stage with the hook, right?
So Cameron, one of the issues here is like a lot of like normies, as Joker pointed out, they don't really pay very close attention to like what's going on.
Mhm.
They'll watch like a TV show and they'll be like, oh, I don't like that, or like whatever. But they don't really know like the broader kind of cultural civil war that's going on. So like when you're talking to people and arguing the basis of like political propaganda versus entertainment, how do you communicate to someone who doesn't pay the closest attention to what's going on that that stuff is being ruined by injecting politics into it?
Well, I mean, in my case, it's very easy because I'll just give personal experience. If people can call me a conspiracy theorist, I'm like, yeah, but I've sat in writers' rooms where I've watched it happen, right? Where I've watched a particular political narrative be stuffed down our throats and voices being silenced, and that's gotten worse in the last several years. It was always there. There's always sort of that element of before when I first started 20 years ago. There was always the loudmouth person who wants to save humanity, who's got something to say, right? And they were just one voice in the room. Then eventually became the boss's voice. Then it eventually became the system's voice. And eventually you actually, instead of arguing with that person, you have to go, I remember, without revealing which show it was once, I was sitting on a show where you had all these wokey people, including the boss. And they were your standard white people that were pretending they weren't white, right? And so there was the talk of, white man is bad, white people this. I was like, look, I'm the one brown guy sitting in the room, all these white people condemning white people and championing the minorities. I'm sitting there listening to this finally, and I finally just said, I raised my hand and said, I just want to say one thing. I like white people. Thinking I was being like facetious. I'm like, no, I mean, I'm like the brown guy in the room, and I don't generalize my entire ethnicity or pigmentation, right?
What's wrong with
you?
you?
Do that to cut like this particular gentleman who come after me on the feed. It turns out that he had written a movie that a lot of people felt he was a white man. A lot of people felt that a black man or a black person should have been allowed to write that movie. It was about the black community. And so he's covering his ass by being wokey, right? So that's the agenda. So, I mean, I could talk about those personal experiences directly saying, I've witnessed that. And there's, if you really want to go to the deeper levels of conspiracy, I cross paths with all kinds of things. I've worked on shows about terrorism, and things like that, the very serious topics. And you deal with government officials in that, we'll have like FBI consultants, whatever. And then you learn a lot of things about how the government influences, those kinds of conversations, right? How politicians influence them, how intelligence agencies get involved in Hollywood. And that's when you're sitting there. It's not a conspiracy theory. You're actually sitting opposite a government representative who really would like you to do it this way, right? And so you're like, okay, well, that's not a conspiracy theory when you're actually in the room, right? But then it comes down to whether someone believes you or not. And there are people, like Michelle suggested, there are people that just, that don't, they have to, it's part of their paradigm already. So they don't want a question. And the last thing they want to hear from me is that, I've sat in rooms where it's an actual conspiracy to suppress certain ideas, right? They don't want to hear it because they share that desire to express those ideas. So.
Yeah, so before we move on to Brian, I just want to apologize to everyone in chat. I know that Natalie made you all feel very unsafe while she was here. So we just want to let you know that we've learned from this experience, and moving on, we will be very careful not to invite Natalie back, just Michelle.
You know what it was? It was that red hair.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
It was that red hair.
No.
They're canceling redheads in Hollywood. I don't know why.
It
kind of related to this.
Me back. It just flashed me back to when I was in high school, sitting there with my Dungeons and Dragons loser friends, right? And then the hot chick for some reason will come sit with us at the table, right? And you're like,
gosh,
you don't know what to do, right?
Well,
Actually, that actually never happened. That's just a fantasy sequence. I would imagine a hot chick would come sitting next to us.
Kind of related to this same topic, you asking how we explain this kind of stuff. I literally had to, at one point, I was talking to this with a friend of mine, and I pulled up a chart of all the redheads that had been canceled and replaced in Hollywood. And the chart is huge now. It's huge.
I mean, Ariel.
And I just showed them the chart on my phone, and they were like, holy crap, dude, you're right. And I mean, that's all it takes. It was wild. It's like, so yeah, go ahead.
I'm so triggered I had to take 3 lorazepam. Well, I didn't have to, but I thought it was a good idea anyway.
Yeah.
On that, Matt, and actually want to just throw this in there because I've been a champion of this because it surprised me. For those who watch, Ms. Marvel wasn't the comic, and it ended up not being a woke show because it was reshot, right? It was heavily reshot. And one of the interesting changes that in the reshot version that actually aired is that you've got the redhead who comes across in the trailer as your standard mean girl redhead. So you think, here we go, redhead villain, right? In the comics, she really is that white girl villain, right? In the show, she ends up being redeemed and being one of the heroes, and she does that because Ms. Marvel saved her life, and she's not the person. And that's actually a deviation from the wokeness of the comics, where she's your Cordelia bitchy girl that never is redeemed, right? And so that's an awareness. Now the redheads are getting their moment back. So Ms. Marvel was the beginning of a pendulum turn because they intentionally changed that.
I don't know what Little Mermaid's about to say differently.
I married a redhead, and I have 2 redheaded daughters. And,
where's my mermaids?
I'm very much aware of this whole phenomenon, and so are they. It's very strange, but anyway, moving on.
So Brian, how do you convince normies that entertainment's being corrupted by politics?
Well, I mean, there is no convincing people that have already fallen for it. There's no convincing them. Sorry to say, we're living in a society where, like, you can literally pull out, like Vader said, you can pull out a graph showing all the gingers, the soulless gingers that have been removed from Hollywood, and they would think that he was lying. When you weaponize terms like fake news and you spread it on normie platforms like Facebook, then the only people that are really in the know are the people that have taken the time to really investigate every single topic. And regular people have jobs and go to school or in kids, and they don't have time for that. So all they really get is whatever news headlines are popping up on their CNN feed or whatever, right? Or whatever's curated to them on Facebook from their liberal friends or their conservative friends or any friends. So convincing people one way or the other is turning into somewhat of a waste of time. Because if they're not already looking for answers, then you're not going to be able to tell them any differently. They have to be actively seeking information, actively seeking the truth versus true. Like that term, like true is the shadow of truth, right? Well, a shadow can be manipulated. If you want to actually show them the actual source of said light, truth, they have to look for it. Until they look for it, you can't really convince them. I've learned that. I used to try to convince all my friends and family. Hey guys, look at this. This is a problem. Look at this issue over here. Look what these politicians. By the way, all politicians are the worst. They're the worst.
Yep.
Look at this, and everyone's like, "Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, whatever you say, bud." But the second someone gets pissed off on CNN or some mainstream media site, all of a sudden they take up the cause because they're already in this mode where they believe whatever the surface level is, and the surface level is controlled mainly by the woke agenda. And there's no really getting past that until specific normies actually want to learn more. I don't think you can teach them.
So to finish off with Joker's question, I would just say that I would answer with another question, which is the political message vital to the story of the entertainment that you're watching, or could it be completely removed and you wouldn't miss it? Because there's a difference between plot points and propaganda. And if a movie is propaganda, then you can't remove the politics from it without the whole movie falling apart. And if you can, then it's simply a plot point, right? Where like you know, it's a feature of the overarching story. It doesn't detract from the enjoyment factor of it. So I mean, I would go so far as to say that. But speaking of politics and going woke and going broke and all this stuff, let's talk about She-Hulk, everyone's favorite hot button topic right now. So She-Hulk has made headlines lately because I think Marvel's doing some damage control about it being review bombed. And this kind of came to the forefront this week where Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk in the MCU, he quote tweeted a paragraph from a Screen Rant article about She-Hulk being review bombed on IMDb. And by the way, all of our articles that we go over here are linked in the description if anybody wants to like read these things on their own. But essentially, this Screen Rant thing basically kind of takes IMDb to task for not policing their review system appropriately, and about how She-Hulk is getting a bunch of fake 1-star reviews, and they're basically weaponizing reviewing on IMDb, and it's causing credibility problems. Now, I don't know about you guys. I've never gone to IMDb to look at user reviews for stuff, like new stuff that's coming out. But at the same time, if you look at the 5-star reviews, there are just as many fake 5-star reviews as 1-star reviews. And so, like, at what point does review bombing give way to just people actually like giving it bad reviews because it's not a good show? Now, my personal take on She-Hulk is that it's not bad enough to hate, but it's also not good enough to love. It's just kind of like
the same place. Yeah.
It's kind of like a meh,
Meh.
in my opinion. But I want to get everyone's take on this. Let's start with you, Michelle. What's your take on She-Hulk? Do you think it's being review bombed, and what are the implications of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough as far as like the logistics of how they claim people review bomb things, but I mean, it very well could also just be people's honest opinions. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like you said, I don't think it's bad enough that I'm just going to despise it. I only watched the first episode, but it definitely, again, kind of talking about, as you said, woke stuff. As far as the main character, I think only certain type of women are going to find her relatable. I was listening, actually, Natalie was playing, I was in the room, the line where she says something to the effect, "I'm always afraid and angry." And another woman that was in the room looked up and was like, "No, we don't always feel that way." It's just like, because most women, again, that are not of a far left-leaning mindset, just don't feel the things that keep being expressed that all women supposedly feel, which is kind of annoying as a woman listening to, because a lot of us women, it's kind of like the 80s song, like, we just want to have fun. Like, we're not angry all the time. We're not afraid all the time, all this type stuff. I'm kind of giving you more my thoughts on the show, but I don't really know about the review bombing. It really could be a lot of people just, I mean, let's be real. I haven't watched Miss Marvel, Cameron, so I don't have any take on that. But
you will like it if you watch it. I think
Okay.
you will.
Okay.
You'll be startled.
But it's just
I
like
was.
most of these Marvel shows have been like blah, kind of. And I think, honestly, people are coming to expect that from these Marvel shows at this point. So they very well could be genuine, the reviews.
So, Tom, one of the issues that they brought up in this article is that IMDb allows you to rate like movies and TV shows before they're released. And
Not very often, though.
A lot of these review bombs were coming from like, you know, people who hadn't seen the show and all that stuff. Do you think that there's a way where we could de-weaponize reviews in some way, shape, or form?
Well, first of all, last I knew, you couldn't review anything on IMDb until it was dropped. And if they've changed that, then that's their own fault, and they can't blame anybody else or themselves. But just like you said before, I agree. There's probably just as many bombs for the positive as there is the negative. Like, great example was a week and a half ago or whatever it was when The League of Their Own dropped, and it was getting quote unquote review bombed on Amazon. They were literally out there begging for good reviews. Like, I mean, so to me, it's like, what difference does it make? If you're going to sit there and obsess on it, so is everybody else. I remember a time when pretty much every sci-fi, horror, whatever genre film got pretty much a bad rating from every critic. It was almost expected, right? So
Right.
fans didn't give a crap. You know, and this whole idea that people are out there spending their time creating multiple accounts just to review bomb a show like Hulk, it just goes to show you the mentality of the people who are making these claims, right? Just goes to show you that they are the ones who have the time and will go through the kind of effort to do the opposite. And that's all that tells me, because I don't know anybody, and I mean anybody in the chat on this panel that I do know that would sit there and waste their time making 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 accounts on IMDb, because you can't just rate something. You have to have an actual account.
You know what's funny, Tom, is you actually can rate stuff on IMDb prior to it releasing if you're the creator of the title on IMDb.
Mm.
I know that I create all of our docs
that
go up
makes
on
sense,
IMDb,
yeah.
and there's an opportunity to post pre-reviews from critics. Those critics can be whatever critics you want them to be, and you can put those up there so that when it does launch, it launches with legitimate reviews. I don't know if that's what's happening, but that's the
So,
only
Brian-
way to do it.
Brian, I know that a while back, Rotten Tomatoes got called to the floor for manipulating reviews and giving stuff like better reviews than it was warranted. So the war over reviews has been going on for a long time in the
Pretty
entertainment
much
industry.
Captain Marvel kind of started that.
Yeah,
Captain Marvel,
exactly. So how do you think, do reviews play a big role in whether or not a show or a movie is successful?
I got to be honest, to the normies, it does. What happens is, I find people hitting me up saying, "Hey, we're going to go to the movies and watch this. We're going to go see the movie, this movie at the theater." And I respond with, "No, I'm good. That movie sucks." Right? I haven't even seen it yet, but, and again, I'm basing this on my opinion on friends that are on YouTube that I respect their opinions. We have similar taste, right? So when those people that I respect that have similar taste in me go, this movie's slow, it's pompous, the casting's bad, whatever, I go, hey, I'm not gonna go waste my time and money on that, right? Well, whenever I say that, the response is always the same. I don't know, man. Got an 85 on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, okay, and You know how many movies have 90 plus on Rotten Tomatoes that are absolute garbage? Come on.
There's also a difference between like the reviewer score and the audience score.
Audience versus reviewer. Yeah. I mean,
And
honestly,
that's always confusing too, right?
well, no, not for me. If it's a critic review, I go, so we have no idea if that's real. And then when they started throwing shade at the audience portion of it, now I'm like, well, I'm not really sure how much that's real either, but I still tend to agree almost most of the time with whatever the reviewer score is. So when I go watch a movie and I come back, I go, you know what, that reviewer score is pretty spot on. It was like a 40, all right, or it was a 93. And it's funny how you'll see a movie that's a 93 or something reviewer, and it's a 32 audience, and it's a 32 reviewer, and I'm like, oh, well, I think I agree with the audience more. And so when 90% of the time you find yourself agreeing with the audience, then when you do look at the scores for that information, well, you're going to look at the audience score and be like, I most of the time identify with this score anyway. So what are they saying?
Yeah, I find that you can't really trust the actual reviewer reviews because a lot of them are afraid of losing access if they give a bad review to stuff. But Cameron, one of the things in this article, and this is a typical defense of most like woke properties, which is basically the article claims that a lot of this stuff is being motivated by people who are anti-LGBTQIA plus representation and people of color who work in the films.
For She-Hulk?
Just in general, like anytime there's like a review bombing backlash against any of these properties, it's because the people who are doing it hate gay people, trans people, and people of color,
and green
that's
people.
The motivation behind it.
Green lives matter.
Well, I mean, look, that's a standard sort of, the wokesters. That's a standard go-to to actually avoid conversation about the point being raised, right? I mean, it was what I had. Yeah, it's what I had to go through right now on that silly, argument I got onto on the screenwriters board, where the gentleman basically, when I just kept saying, "Hey, do whatever you want, I'll support you, I'll protect you, just leave me alone," he that should have ended it, right? But he couldn't. And so when he couldn't find a way around that perfectly moral stance, you do what you want and I'll protect you, leave me alone. That's perfectly moral stance. He started calling, well, Cameron, you're coming across as right wing. Literally, that was his whole thing. He's like, you're right wing, and then
I love how common sense is right wing now.
Yeah.
That drives me
you're
nuts.
using the word woke as a pejorative. I said, most people on this board use the term woke as a pejorative.
Yeah,
because
only when
kind
they
of become
use it,
that,
it's
right?
not. Yeah.
Yeah, and so even amongst liberal Hollywood people, it's kind of become a joke because we've been through this. All of the people on that screenwriters board were people that were terrified of like their young pronoun spouting assistant, like reporting them for making an off-color joke in the writers' room. I mean, the writers are getting to a place where they're scared of this cancel culture, and these are liberal writers. So that's a standard go-to for that. With regard to just the earlier comment about the review bombing, I mean, I gave up on Rotten Tomatoes for a while. I think it started actually with The Last Jedi when they were actually hiding negative reviews, or they weren't counting anything that was less than, that was 1 star. They just weren't counting it, and even then they couldn't puff up at least the audience score on it, right? And so the audience score I think was like 40%. It's probably the audience was probably 25% realistically supported that movie. But in the last couple of years, it feels like they've let that go. So I go to Rotten Tomatoes for the audience review. I don't care about the critics review. Because even though some of those critics are now beginning to recognize that they're disconnected from their audience, we started seeing that I think with the what is it, the Eternal? What was that Marvel?
Yeah,
movie?
the Eternals.
Yeah, they started going, this is kind of stupid movie and it's not respectful to minorities. The critics, but I just don't pay attention to them. I go to the general popular score, which tends to be accurate. For example, I liked Prey, and the general popular score is it liked Prey. The general populace liked Ms. Marvel when they saw it, and so that, I mean, that's there. The only one other comment I'll make is that there is a danger on those of us who are critiquing this, because we've been through a war for the last several years of all this fire hose of garbage, that we can become that as well. Like, and I keep using the reference of Ms. Marvel because the whole reaction shocked me. I found when I made a positive review of Ms. Marvel on Facebook, it was forwarded to various sort of fan sites. Hey, look, Kamran Pasha liked it. And people were making personal attacks on me and on my character, insulting me. So I went on to those boards. I was like, hey guys, so have you seen it? Do you disagree with my comments? I ain't gonna watch it.
Yeah, but if you haven't seen it,
it's not good. It's like, well, okay, we can't go there too, and that has a tendency.
Spot on, Cameron. Spot on.
And I watched She-Hulk like Michelle. I wanted to like it more than I did because I love Ms. Marvel, and I was like, hey, they're back on track. And then She-Hulk it wasn't bad. Tatiana Maslany is one of the best actresses in the world, so I expected it to be better because she's a superb actress who deserved better work than she got. It was kind of like old mom jokes. Like when we talk about dad jokes, it's kind of like that old mom jokes. It's like, it wasn't that funny, but she still carried what she was given. I mean, it's not a bad show. It's not a great show.
Yeah,
it is. What
I think
it is.
one of my issues with the critics score is if you look at a show like Luke Cage, for instance, the Netflix Marvel series, the incredibly high critics score for that wasn't about the show. It was about the messaging of the show. It was about like, oh, let's prop up people of color and the history and culture of African Americans and stuff like that. And it had literally nothing to do with how bad that show was, because that show was terrible. It was one of the worst written shows I think I've ever seen. But the critics loved it because they loved the messaging behind it. Now, Matt Vader, Mark Ruffalo is the one who kind of like started all this off with his tweet. Mark Ruffalo is well known to be like a complete moron, and he's also a very hardcore leftist. And what do you think about his take on this? Do you think that he's in the right to be defending the show, or is this just yet another in a long line of bad takes by this actor?
He's in the show, so he's a little biased, right? I mean, I guess he can think and post whatever he wants, just like every one of us on this panel can go to Twitter and our social medias and post whatever the heck we want. And we do it every day. Ruffalo is just part of that extreme left-wing liberal Hollywood elitist group of actors who is not shy about his opinion, and he is what he is, right? I mean, what are you supposed to do about him? I find him extremely frustrating because I like the Hulk. I like his take on the Hulk. But him as a person, I don't want to be in the same room with the dude because I have no interest in anything he has to say on a personal level. But I like the character. I like Smart Hulk. He makes me laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
It is, yeah.
You know, at the same token, on the other end of the spectrum, I'm probably not going to enjoy being in the same room with Ben Shapiro either, because I find him super neurotic.
I
and
think you would
super
really
weird.
love me, actually. Matt Banner.
You know what I'm saying?
We can get some coffee and we can talk about taxes.
Yeah, no.
I
don't
really
do
like
that.
to talk about taxes and the IRS, and
Yeah.
you know, it's like,
So I don't listen to his radio show. So I mean, I get it, but you know, and as far as about all the review bombing and all this kind of stuff, if you do this, go find another hobby, because it's just it's silly. I mean, the review bombing thing is just, it's dumb. And you know, I get this image in my brain of all these like dorks in 4chan figuring out how they can like screw with everything, and you know, and you know what
4chan is
other
genius level.
It's insane.
A bunch of geniuses that use their genius
Yeah.
for literally nothing important.
Yeah, and I have visions in my brain of these sweatshops in China that are like being filled with 1,000 people making accounts on IMDb or whatever to go out
It's phones now.
and review bomb. You know,
It would just be a bunch of
movies.
phones controlled by one computer.
because you know, George Soros gave him some money to go out and review bomb this
That's
woke
right.
ass or these terrible
George
right-wing
Soros
shows.
controls
Yeah,
IRS,
yeah.
so like,
Well, and
So,
and Matt,
it's crazy.
going along with what you said, one of you guys may remember some actor recently kind of came out and basically, I think, had the approach that all actors should have. Oh, it was, I think, Matt Smith. He was talking about Morbius, and they asked him about it bombing, and I didn't read it, so I'm terribly paraphrasing. But he was just like, yeah, you know, basically like it happens. Like sometimes things bomb. Like he just kind of moved on. That was it.
I freaking love
And-
Matt Smith. That
I'm
weird
I'm
looking
triggered
dude.
by you calling Morbius a bomb. Just so you know.
I
It's
still need to watch
Morbin
that.
time.
It's
It's
Morbin
the-
time.
Morbius sweep. Yeah.
It just, all of this does with like the Ruffalo stuff, it just really makes me wish that actors out there would just learn. I wish they would just turn their social medias off, because
Yeah.
because there's so many of them that I enjoy their work, but I can't stand their politics. But at the same time, they can't help but like give us their opinion on everything, and I don't care. I don't
Mark's
care
always
about
been
Mark.
one of
I don't
those
care
kind
about
of
Marco
guys.
Ruffalo's opinion. I don't care about Captain America. What's that dude's name?
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans pisses me
Evans,
off all
yeah.
the time too. But you know, at the same time,
He's not too bright, dude.
no, I don't really necessarily
Well, that's what we
need
got to
to
remember.
hear,
These guys are actors, right?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
actors. They're not rocket
It's the
scientists. Yeah.
same thing goes with like our friend like Adam Baldwin. He's extremely political on the social media. I love that dude, and he was on our show, and he was really cool. But he would have probably a way more bigger. Man, I'm done. He would his fan base would be bigger if, you know, he probably wasn't
He was
so
a leftist. Yeah.
so a rightist instead of leftist. You know, it's just crazy. So entertain
Right.
me, people. That's
Should we
all
just-
I
should we
want.
just shut
Entertain
up?
me.
So
Yeah,
You know what's
I-
funny?
I-
If you like
I
Star
just-
Trek, never go look at Star Trek
Oh, it's the worst.
actors' Twitters.
It's the worst.
Oh my god! When I saw Tim Russ's Twitter, I'm like, oh my god, this man is nuts.
Mhm.
Like he's
I-
legitimately a crazy person.
I want to open this up to the panel. So one of the big tactics ever since 2016 in Ghostbusters has been to deflect legit creative criticism about a TV show or a movie by attacking the fans criticizing it and accusing them of being like bigots, misogynists, like whatever the ist might be. Do you think that this is just another way of Marvel attacking the fans, or you know, is there some truth to the idea that the worst elements of fandom are the ones behind these attacks?
I refuse to believe it. Like, sure, is there some sexist, racist people out there in the fandom? Sure, maybe a few. But growing up a nerd, I have never met a more inviting, accepting people in the world. Because nerds
Bingo.
grow up ostracized their whole life. They get picked on, they get beat up, called names for liking Spider-Man. Oh, you're a Star Wars nerd. I
Yep.
mean, we've had friends that we've related to, and the last thing we think about is the color of the skin. The first thing we think about is how they treat us, right?
Well,
That's the way nerds usually
is-
see the world.
The first thing for me is what are they like? What do you like more, Star Wars or Star Trek? Then I judge you appropriately from there.
And then the other
Stargate.
side
I
of
like
it is same
Stargate.
thing with women too. Is
Boom.
like, have
That's
you ever
the right
seen a
answer.
group of nerds around a woman? Oh my god! Like they will tell you everything you want to know about anything they're into. So this whole idea that men are gatekeeping women out, that they're trying to keep other people out of this is bullshit.
That's
It's
so
the people that
bullcrap,
have
yeah.
come in and took over. They are the gatekeepers, and they are the ones who are actually doing this shit. And they're trying to manipulate the system. And again, it just all boils down to this straw man argument of, oh, well, just because you don't like the color black means you must not like black people. It's like, no, I just prefer not to, roast when I'm outside in the summertime, so I don't wear black all the time. That's the straw man argument, right? It couldn't be that you possibly are, just don't like something. It has to go to that extreme. And it's like, I cannot believe that there are this many racists out there. I cannot believe that there are this many sexists out there. It just does not make any freaking sense.
How about this, Tom? Amongst all the people we know that have the same issues with the same exact issues for the most part, with a lot of these really horrible takes on our favorite pastimes, how many of them are racist? Because I don't know a single one of them that are racist. Like I know them personally, and they're not racist. We have the same take. So like I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, where are all the racist people? People, we
Exactly.
Didn't like the
It's
movie,
kind of like
not
all the
because it was
free drugs I got promised as a kid.
Right? Where's all the free drugs? No, like here's the deal. If you go, I didn't like that movie, and that movie happened to have featured someone who wasn't white or wasn't a man, then their first response is, oh, you don't like it because the casting choice. Well, I might not like it because the casting choice, because maybe you made a character that has for 87 years been one thing, you made him completely different. And now it's Joanna Constantine instead of John. Well, yeah, I got a problem with that. Not because I hate women, because that character isn't a woman. Bottom line. So if you want to make a new character or use one of the existing characters from that IP, go for it. Doesn't make me sexist or racist. It makes me a fan of the property, and you are taking and making a movie or a TV show that is the opposite of what fans already want to see. What do you expect to happen?
So,
the biggest problem
I want to jump in for a second. So everything Tom is saying, everything Brian's saying is absolutely correct. And I believe, based on my own experiences just interacting with the YouTube community for about 18 months now, that the vast majority of fans are normal people, right? Normal people with normal values, right? However, there is an unfortunately vocal minority which is very easily able to get the spotlight on itself. Tom, when I've been on Midnight's Edge, I'd say 98% of the comments are all very gracious, even when they don't agree with me. But there's always one jackass that feels the need. Shut up, you Pakistani moron. I like Ms. Marvel.
Well, usually I think they key in more on the Muslim aspect.
My eyes will go to it because as a human being, you react to that. You're startled by it, right? And so you get.
And to be fair, Cameron, I think
I
think it's more the Islam aspect than it is anything. So like,
it's because of Islam and the taxes.
Yeah, like that can be a more religious issue, and it has less to do with somebody worrying about the color of somebody's skin than their beliefs. So because I've run into, I'm technically Christian, and I've run into Christians that I can't even get along with. So like, I think that's more of a
I can't get along.
Yeah, I think that's more of that kind of a thing. I don't think it's more of a skin color thing, but
but it's some kind of bigotry. Because unfortunately we've gotten to a place where if I say, oh, you're Muslim, you're racist because you don't like me as Muslim. Well, Islam isn't a race. You're right. But then what I'm trying to say is you're a bigot. It's just a word, right?
So, no. I get what you're saying. I just wanted to make it clear.
The issue is we do have a small minority of loudmouths, and they feed this system because those guys are out there looking for them. They're out there looking for them, and then hoisting their tweets, hoisting their stuff. And there's no way to control that because there's always going to be some loudmouth jackass. But that's why I'm always reminding people, let's not allow those voices to get louder. If you don't agree with them, speak up in the chat or speak up and respond. Don't let them think they have more power than they do because they don't.
Go ahead, Matt.
I say it's crazy to me how we as a society let less than 3% of the actual population control the absolute narrative on social media.
Yeah,
there's not that many people that are like these crazy people out there, but yet they take up 95% of
the headspace
of the headspace. It's crazy. It's really crazy to me.
So speaking of racism and jackasses, let's talk about Warner Brothers going anti-woke. There was a article that came out this week from a bastion of media credibility known as the Daily Beast, where they talk about how they interviewed certain executives that were laid off from Warner Brothers, and they're talking about how Warner Brothers is basically anti-people of color, anti-women, because they're purging under the new leadership all these executives who basically are people of color. And so one of the things I found interesting about this article is they said that as many as 13 people of color have been fired out of 70 people that they've fired. And all,
I didn't even notice that. That's great.
And all 13 people of color.
Yeah, we did the percentile.
Were from the unscripted production division and children's content division. So what was interesting to me is that Discovery, who's taking over Warner Brothers, is an expert in unscripted, content. So they don't need anyone from that division. And also like the stuff that WB was doing in the kids division was so insanely expensive. And a lot of these cuts that are coming out are basically just common sense, financial decisions. But this article frames it as if they're purging every person of color. They said that there's a huge lack of diversity at WB nowadays because the entire 13 people who were diverse enough to be in the company to begin with have been purged. And they're saying that they just want David Zaslav just wants Chip and Joanna Gaines to be on everything like 24/7.
I hope not.
I also found this interesting where they talked about how the difference between the audience of HBO Max and Discovery Plus, where basically HBO Max is popular with diverse groups, single people, and drivers of hybrid cars, whereas Discovery Plus is popular with white married people who drive SUVs, minivans, and traveling buses. Discovery Plus viewers are either empty nesters or have grandchildren, and HBO Max viewers have no kids. And they wonder why they're purging children's content from HBO Max if the people subscribe to it don't have any kids.
And this sounds like a very interpreted version of this internal thing. Because
I gotta say about the no kids things. Like I have kids, but I'm not putting my kids' profiles in HBO Max because HBO Max is insane. Like I don't want them even knowing the app exists.
Also, in the unscripted version of this, so a big purge was the unscripted division. HBO Max was spending a lot of money with celebrities to do like highly produced documentaries. And Zaslav came in and was like, "Why are we spending all this money? Like we can make an unscripted show for like less than $2 over at Discovery." So
hire a YouTuber.
yeah, exactly. So basically, this article kind of frames what's going on over at HBO Max as some type of underhanded way to get rid of diversity and LGBTQ representation and all this other stuff in favor of white people. When it turns out that the previous regime of Warner Brothers, which I guess was a lot more progressive, had like 13 people of color and women in two of their worst divisions that just got purged. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this take because Warner Brothers has been making a lot of headlines lately about their business decisions and getting stuff like kind of like getting their house in order. And we're going to be talking a little bit about Aquaman and stuff being pushed back in a little bit. But I want to get your take on this. Cameron, do you think that this is a situation where it is actually motivated by racism? Like, how do you tell the difference between racism and common sense financial decisions?
Well, I've worked for Warner Brothers multiple times. Like when I was on Nikita and other shows, Warner Brothers was the studio, and they're the ones that sent me my paychecks. They're the ones that send me my residuals, right? So I know them pretty well. You did a very good analysis of the economic situation here, and I've been on my Patreon talking about David Zaslav for over a year now that he was going to follow the economics. I'm a huge Discovery watcher, right? And he's good at hooking me in with the Bigfoot shows, right? And so he knows what the market wants. And so no, I don't believe for 1 second that any of this is motivated from actual bigotry. And I actually want to raise the point. People know who have follow or watch me on YouTube, I'm a very big follower of Malcolm X. You know, it's a very, very personal hero for me. And Malcolm X, as a spokesman for minorities, said this back in the 60s. You know, he was very much against what we would call modern affirmative action programs, right? He's very much against quotas, things like that, and advancing people that weren't ready, because he said that's exactly going to lead to the bigotry of low expectations, right? So, you know, Hollywood has had a situation, and I've witnessed it myself, where you have people that are given a job because they're a minority. Often they're specifically chosen because they're not very competent. I've seen good minority candidates not get the job because they're seen as uppity. They're seen as someone who might actually take the boss's job one day. That's a problem. So you replace them with people that will be good for the PR purposes, but will never be a threat to your own job, right? I've witnessed that. I've criticized that on shows where I saw that happening, where I worked on a show where a talented African-American woman was let go under really bad pretenses, and then less talented people were brought in because she was a threat. And I confronted the showrunner about that. Didn't go well, that conversation. But at least I had the shield of, I'm a brown guy telling you I don't like what's happening here, right? But they didn't like being shown that. So what was happening here is that alarm from what I call the club, you know, the old Hollywood club, and Warner Brothers under Ann Sarnoff had become very much the old Hollywood club, the aristocratic club that likes to keep things stratified, right? And likes to do the PR. We look at all these LGBTQ, look at all these minorities. And I got a guy coming in just doing pure economics and cleaning house of people that aren't relevant to the economic model, who had been staffed by Ann Sarnoff and her crowd, just happened to be minorities for PR purposes, right? It's exactly what Malcolm X warned about. This is the bigotry of low expectations. If you are not able to stand on your own, then the system is going to flush you out. They'll raise you up and they'll flush you out, and you know, you'll be left there with nothing. And that's what's happening here. But nobody wants to go to that level of analysis because nobody wanted to hear Malcolm X in the 60s either, because it's too close to the truth. So
Michelle, I want to talk to you about the demographics that were mentioned in this article, where basically Zaslav is saying like, hey, we've got an older audience. They tend to be married. They have grown kids. They drive SUVs and gas guzzlers. You know, like they're interested in certain things. And then HBO, it's like they're young. They drive hybrid cars. They don't have any kids. Do you think that it's wise to shift the focus of the demographic going forward to these other, like older demographic from like the younger, hipper demographic?
So is he going to shift HBO Max to try to bring in like the older demographic?
So the idea is that they're going to be merging HBO Max with Discovery Plus, and that means changes on the HBO Max end.
Yeah, see, I've heard someone bring that up recently, and I guess HBO Max, when they did that poll of which streaming service do you like the best, HBO Max I think won the poll that was done. So Tim, in my opinion, you want to be very careful. I mean, I don't know the economic side. I don't know how profitable this guy views HBO Max, but you want to be careful in what you do with HBO Max, considering people seem to be pretty happy with it, in my opinion. Because I haven't had HBO Max in several months, but I do enjoy it. I think it's got one of the best movie libraries that there is on any streaming service. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I think they better be careful, because people are not going to like it if they switch it, if they basically just kind of get rid of HBO Max or really switch it up.
So Brian, is it a problem that HBO and Warner Brothers Discovery is becoming too white, where they get rid of all 13 people of color from the company and start making programming decisions?
Well, I heard they're changing the name to HB Only White. So,
Jesus.
I was laughing so hard when you were talking about the stats. Oh, it's so insane. Like the percentage. I want to know. Someone do the math for me.
it is 18%. We did it yesterday. 18% that were fired were actually persons that weren't white, let's say.
So-
I hate using that other term because to
So
me it's no different than the
18%
other
of
term.
non-white.
according
yeah.
to sources who don't want to be identified. So you know,
Wow.
that's a flag
And according
right
to
there
the
for me.
Daily Beast, which isn't known for its objectivity or factualism.
So the other 82%. We're not talking about those people.
No, fuck them.
No.
Okay.
They're
All right. So
They'll
it's
move
They'll
on.
be
it's a
fine. They got
travesty.
white privilege.
It's
Yeah.
a travesty. Those poor 18%. Like, I have no words. Zaslav is just like axing anything that makes no sense. And it's so wonderful to see because you have these people losing their minds. Like, he's getting rid of all the woke stuff and this and that. And like, oh, so the stuff that makes no money, the stuff that's not making any money, not moving the needle forward, and is weighing the entire company down. So in reality, what they're saying is this stuff is all highly unsuccessful and to every degree, and it needs to go. But they're mad that it's going, and they're calling this guy who's not a right-wing person whatsoever a crazy right-winger because he's getting rid of all the leftist stuff. But what you're telling me is that the hyper-leftist stuff on your platform is not working, and it hasn't worked for a long time. So
it's like, Brian, it's like they crunched some numbers and figured out what people were watching and what people weren't, right? It's right. Amazing. It's so amazing how that works. Right.
Yeah. When they were like, oh, why did they get rid of the show? Well, because they're paying for this particular show to be on their platform still. They're paying a lease on it or whatever, right? They're paying some kind of annual or biannual or whatever, some kind of money to keep this movie or this TV show there. And they can look at the numbers and say, the amount of people that are watching it are so low that it isn't worth us paying to even keep those subscribers. That means that if those subscribers were only logging in to watch that one movie, whatever it was, if they left, the numbers add up to where we would actually save money.
Yeah. Also, the productions that were getting approved were way more expensive than what Discovery thought they could bring them in for. So there was that too.
I don't know. As a 50-something-year-old grandfather who drives around a gas-guzzling Jeep Wrangler, I love my HBO Max. I watch it almost every single day.
Same.
And I don't watch Discovery Plus because if I have to watch one more person remodel their house with shiplap and put a bunch of nonsense crap they bought at IKEA in their store, I'm over it.
The Bigfoot stuff is good.
Ridiculous.
So there was this window here, and we decided to move the window down so that our cat can see out of the window.
All of these stupid ass house remodel, house flipping, house destroying, cabin building, dock is done.
Hold on.
it.
I have Discovery Plus for one reason, because my kids and my wife love Dr. Pimple Popper. So
I will say that I'm a big fan of Discovery Plus. I like a lot of their shows. Real quick before we get to Tom's take on this, Mr. Tickle Trunk for Canadian $5, which is like $10 American. The demographics at Warner's are now the USA average in all demographic categories. The articles about racism hold no water. Let's hope for meritocracy. I know the idea of something like, actually like being of merit is kind of like foreign in Hollywood. So that's good. And then we have J.S. Pina for $1.99. Yo, Michelle. I think, did he spell it right? Is it one L or two L's?
Oh, he's got it. It's got two L's.
He's got it. Two L's. Okay, good. All right. So Tom, I know that you're kind of like the wonky industry expert on the panel here. So I want to get your take on this. This article is obviously a hit piece, which means that Zaslav is doing something right. So what's your take on this?
That's just exactly it. I mean, in fact, I said this may even be a sign of what I've been dubbing the final right? Because what that consists to begin of is when you have a bunch of people going, you can't do this because of this, and woke. And he goes, yes, I can. And sorry, nope.
Or he just goes, you're fired.
Yeah, they're just, it's like, if you don't do this, I'm leaving. And do me a favor, please. Walk out that door. That's where he's at. He's looking at it. He's like, does it make money? Are people watching it? No. Well, then we're not doing it. And he's really taken the reins. And I've heard, let's just say I know somebody who's close enough to him to kind of know how his personality is. And he's a very calculated, calm individual for the most part, who's very I hate to use the term conservative, but he's he has very classic values.
Traditional. The word's
traditional value. There you go. Traditional values.
The article referred to it as middle America.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing that New York and LA forget is that Middle America is the rest of the gall-darn country.
Yeah,
That's what
come
they
on,
forget.
man.
Like, just because you want to see something doesn't mean that the rest of the country does. And something that Paul Chato, who's a frequent guest on our channel, has pointed out so eloquently is that in Hollywood, and I'm sure Cameron will agree with this, a lot of times the most of the stuff that's being made is made for those people in Hollywood and not anybody else. They're being made just to entertain themselves and push their own agenda and messages, and the rest of the people be damned. And that's where Zaslav is like, no, we need to make shit that people want to watch. If they want to watch a talking fart and Twinkie, I'm going to give them that. I don't care what this is over here. It, like you said, if we're not going to do a bunch of docu series or what do you call them? The unscripted reality programs with people like Selena Gomez, because there's no sense to it, right?
Right.
Why would you do something like that when you can get some no Joe has been for next to nothing and everybody will still watch it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
he's even more entertaining. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Or
especially
dancing pubic hairs.
Yes, yeah, even that. So like at this point, he knows exactly how to make something for next to nothing, and if he's gonna cancel a movie like Batgirl, that tells you something, right? And don't even get me started on the DC side of things, because this is a big point of contention with a lot of people right now, and I know a lot of people want to see the Snyderverse restored, but we're gonna find out in December what his 10-year plan is, and I think it's gonna have a lot less to do with Snyder than it is what he said is a reset.
I don't think it's
right.
going to be. I don't think it's going to have anything to do with Snyder. I think it might utilize the same in-universe storylines and characters that Snyder might have started with, but you can continue the Snyderverse without Zack Snyder. You don't need Zack Snyder.
Well, don't tweet that, Brian, because if you do, you'll have a bunch of people saying,
my
like,
God.
Well, you also
actually,
gotta
you can't
remember,
have the Snyderverse
a
without
lot of
Zack
these
Snyder.
actors are at the end of their contracts, right? Like Wonder Woman, there's one more left. I think there's one more Aquaman left.
Right.
I mean,
But you can still continue the Snyderverse with those actors and those characters without Zack Snyder.
But I want to get Matt.
Although, by the
Vader's,
way, a friend of mine tweeted that, and he got death threats. He got actual.
I mean, I get death threats every time I talk about Zack Snyder, so that's fun. Matt Vader 74. What are your thoughts on David Zaslav cleaning house over at Warner Brothers?
I kind of feel like it probably needs to be done. The dude seems like he's just being a common sense businessman to me, right? I mean, they're crunching numbers. They're seeing
but that's racist.
No, it's not. It's business. It's capitalism. It's running a business. He went in there and he saw some things that needed fixed, and I feel like he's fixing them. And it's never a popular job to be the guy that has to make hard choices, right? And he's going to get criticism from everybody on every side of the aisle. So it is what it is, man. I mean, yep.
Real quick, we have a $9.99 super chat from Neil. The article reeks of salt. These folks are checkbox crackheads, only care about ticking the box, not if it's not whether or not it's good or making money. Their efforts do damage to diverse folks, seeing us as shields/tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also want to apologize to JS Pina for mispronouncing his name. I'm the destroyer of names, so my apologies on that. Before we move on to the next topic, I just wanted to touch base with Cameron real quick, because I know that the Batgirl situation, it was made by the same guys who made Miss Marvel and Bad Boys for Life and stuff like that. They're Muslim filmmakers. Do you think that there was any kind of subtext as to racism for that thing, or was it just like a bad movie that they couldn't figure out a way to actually make money on if they released it?
All right. So I'm going to answer it in two ways. One is there were objective economic realities that David Zaslav was facing, and he decided that this movie is not going to bring us a return. And the movie probably wasn't in great shape enough that he could say, look, I can't put out any version of this. And also, we don't know his plan for DC, as Tom is doing. We don't actually know his plan. We'll find out. So this may not fit into, because it's part of the Batman world, right? And so how does this fit in? It's got a different Commissioner Gordon. What's the plan, right? This may be completely violating whatever his secret plan is for DC. So that I think is the overarching thing that happened here. However, I will add a caveat to that, which is that I predicted this would happen back in March, right? Which people are like, that's absolutely insane. If anyone goes back to my Patreon, they'll see I made these articles that sounded insane in March, which is that these two gentlemen were being mentored by by Will Smith. That's how they got their big break on doing Bad Boys 3, right? And they were just indie filmmakers in Europe that really nobody paid any attention to, young guys. And then Will Smith liked their indie film and gave them Bad Boys 3, and they did a good job. It was an entertaining movie. And then when Will Smith did the slap, I immediately put out a post talking about, here's the unsurprising thing that's going to happen. These two guys, Adil and Bilal, are going to lose their careers. You know, based on my personal experience, just my own journey as a Muslim guy in this town, they don't want us here. They don't want us here. They really don't want us here. Islam is seen as a threat to the Hollywood system for two reasons. One is it's seen as a conservative religion that won't get on board with the pronouns and the social narrative. It just won't, and for the most part. And so that's a problem. And two is it's seen as threatening to the state of Israel, which is an emotional issue for a lot of people in Hollywood, right? So it's particularly, I've experienced this 20 years of one step forward, three steps back, and this nonsense, and very directly told, yeah, guy called, said, don't hire that guy. I don't want that guy around. So I said, this is what's going to happen. Without their protection, they're going to lose everything. And one by one, they lost everything immediately thereafter. They lost Bad Boys 4. They lost Beverly Hills Cop 4. And then the one impossible thing is they had a movie that was shot. And I predicted that they're going to lose that too. So one can say, well, Cameron, that's just you being oversensitive and you know, you're projecting your own personal journey onto them. The fact that I predict they would lose this movie because the town wasn't going to protect them.
Right.
Zaslav had every economic reason to get rid of that movie. But in other cases, you often do a softer landing than what they got. Right. They gotta pull their plug completely. Right. And I said, these guys are done. Nobody wants them here. And it turns out that's exactly what happened, improbable as it sounded back in March. So I'm just going to leave that there. You can believe that or not believe that. I just knew this was going to happen based on no one was going to help them.
Makes total sense.
So speaking of Warner Brothers, let's talk about this rumor that Warner Brothers is out of money, which I think is kind of funny. And this goes hand in hand with the announcement made this week that Warner Brothers is pushing back two of its big DC movies, Aquaman and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So this is a Screen Rant article that talks about that they only have enough money to do 3 more theatrical releases this year, and that pushing back the DC property shows that they're in deep financial trouble, all because of Zaslav's irresponsible financial decisions to shelf Batgirl and all that other stuff. Now, I want to point out that they have enough money to release 3 movies theatrically this year. There's 4 months left in the year. You know, so that's basically like a movie a month. I don't think that is any sign that they're running out of money. But it is interesting to see, especially piggybacking off of the article that we just looked at, how the media is trying to frame these very common sense business decisions as evidence that Zaslav is running Warner Brothers into the ground. Tom, you seem very passionate about this. Let's hear what your take is.
I can rewrite the headline for him. It should say Zaslav only feels comfortable releasing 3 more movies this year. That should tell you the state of things when he took over, right? And I can't even believe the 3 titles he picked. I'm like, Jesus, how bad are these things if House Party is one of those movies you decided to pick? Like, seriously, like, this is the level we've gotten to. So I feel bad for Zaz in this situation, and I understand where Cameron's coming from. I hope these directors are not being blackballed in Hollywood. It seems like everybody else who's been involved in this project has been getting a gimme project in response to it. So hopefully they also get one in that case. Because again, I don't think it's anything personal towards the directors. I think it has everything to do with Zaz looking at the bottom line, like you said, seeing that Batgirl was leading down a path he did not want to go down. And as far as them not having any money, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Insane.
They are backed up by one of the biggest media conglomerates ever. AT&T, they're still part of that. All this was reverse Morris trust because AT&T didn't know how to run a entertainment company. So they brought in Discovery, ran by Zaslav, who has been this little engine that could, and I've been telling people about that before he was even part of the equation. Because I used to ask people about streaming services like, do you use Paramount Plus? Do you use this, that, the other? And the one I was completely unaware about, but people would keep bringing up to me personally, was Discovery Plus. And the interesting thing they would always say is, I got to have it. I'm like, what do you mean you got to have it? It's like, I got to have it or we miss out on it.
It's excellent. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
So like, I noticed this before and I'm like, if they can get this guy involved, then hey, you never know what they could pull off, because HBO Max has the content and the history involved in it, and the name HBO itself tells you everything you need to know about it, right?
Yeah.
HBO is synonymous with what they're doing, so I don't think that they're going to change the name too much. I think it's just going to be HBO Discovery, and I think he sees a way to streamline this whole thing, make it a lot more like Discovery Plus, and not so much in the actual content, but in a sense that people say, I gotta have it, because he already knows. They broke it down in their earnings call. Women prefer stuff that's on Discovery. Men prefer stuff that's on HBO. They're going to go with that. They didn't bring that up for no good reason.
Right.
They brought that up because they know it's a fact. And as Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
And if you remember, HBO used to
morning.
be synonymous with men's entertainment, right? It was boxing and sports and women, like naked bodies all the time. It was all that kind of stuff all the time. That's what HBO is all about, plus the comedians and the other specials, the concerts and whatnot. I'm sure he's going to try and get HBO back to that kind of prestige, because anymore, HBO is floundering. If the only thing you got is Game of Thrones, and you're barely getting half the audience that a show like Star Trek The Next Generation used to get, and you're thinking that that's a huge audience, there's something wrong here. Because, I mean, that's your biggest premiere, and you're like, yay! Well, you should be doing better than that.
So I have my HBO stuff that I watch up in front of me right now, and I have Warriors, the Tropper show, Big Bang Theory, because my wife and I still watch that for some reason, Hard Knocks, Superman the Animated Series, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. That is some entertainment right there, my friends. I mean, it's just
and Matt, I want to go.
That's the way it goes.
My entire list is gone because Zaslav removed it all from the platform.
Matt, I want to go to you about this. What do you think are the implications of them pushing back Aquaman and Shazam to next year?
Honestly, Matt, I am not a business-minded guy. I don't see how that will prevent people from buying tickets to see Aquaman, whether it's released next month or next year. I don't really feel like it has any huge impact on the movies themselves at all. As far as the business decisions go,
this being pushed back has everything to do with Amber Heard, nothing to do with business.
They probably have to tweak the movie some, films, maybe refilm,
as we reported a month
ago,
or
whatever, so
it's good for it.
People they're going to spin this however they want to spin it, but we'll get the movie when I guess it's ready and when Zaslav and his plan comes together. So I'm fine with it. Just give us a good show.
So if I may, I can tell you, I heard from two different sources the same exact thing, basically, and that was the problem with Aquaman isn't Amber Heard. It's the fact that the movie sucks.
Okay.
That's what I heard. That it's just that bad.
Yeah. Can I give you my prediction? I think you're right, Tom. And I think what's happening is because they're also moving around the movies so that they take place in a different order, which is very important. Because if you look at the changes being made and the fact that Ben Affleck is doing reshoots for Aquaman, and he did shoots, more than reshoots. He actually was added to the Flash film. He was added to the movie. After he was out of the movie, after they axed Batgirl and they minimized Keaton's involvement in the Flash, they then added Ben Affleck's Batman to the Flash, and now he's doing shoots for Aquaman, and a lot of them, enough of them to have pages of Instagram and social media posts from him and Momoa. So you have an entire. I feel like the plan. Well, they haven't revealed the plan for DC yet, but I think the plan is to sort of soft reboot the whole universe and sort of like use the Flash movie to start moving the franchise into a 10-year phase one Marvel type plan. And I think Ben Affleck is I think for the foreseeable future, I think he's going to be Batman. And I think that those are the changes being made. And I think they're a good thing. I think all of the moving around is a good thing. Also, the Shazam release date was stupid. The first time they released Shazam, the first Shazam movie, which was a Christmas movie, it literally, like, you go back and watch Shazam, it was basically a Christmas superhero movie. But was it released in December? No. It was like June or something.
October, I think.
Shazam, was it? I thought Shazam was April. It came out like the month after Captain Marvel.
Whatever it was put in the wrong time. It's a December Christmas movie, and it was released in the summer. And then they take this next movie, Shazam 2, which is a summer movie, and they're releasing it in December. So Zaslav is like, hold up, or whoever over there, this is a bad idea. First off, we don't want to put Shazam 2 up against Avatar 2. We don't want to put any movie up against Avatar 2 until we know how the Avatar franchise is gonna work out. And the movie should be a summer release. So you moved it. And it makes complete sense. And Aquaman going after the Flash makes the most sense, considering that you are fundamentally changing the story to include Ben Affleck so that it works with the Flash movie. It makes complete sense to me.
I also want to point out that the first Aquaman was released in December, made over $1 billion. So like it makes sense that they would move it from March to a December release frame.
Right. Yeah.
But I want to go to Michelle. Michelle, there are two things I want to get your opinion on here. So the first is that one of the movies that it seems that Warner Brothers can afford to release is this film called Don't Worry, Darling. It's coming out September 23rd. And this is Olivia Wilde's, picture. She's a very beautiful actress. She's been in a lot of things, but she's moving more into the directing space. And just this week, leading up to a September release, it feels like there's this big AstroTurf publicity push of her versus Shia LaBeouf. Where they're kind of feuding with each other in the trades and on Twitter and stuff like that over Olivia Wilde claiming that he was fired versus him claiming that he quit. And so like, this is the first time I've heard of this movie. I don't think anyone cares about this movie, but it feels like that they're trying their best to drum up interest through this fake drama here. What's your take on that? And do you think that it's wise for Warner Brothers to be spending any money on this movie to release it in theaters?
Okay, first I will say I did see the trailer, and the movie could end up being total junk. The trailer did interest me and Natalie, I think, as just two women. It almost looked like a different take on the Stepford Wives type of story, is what it looked like. It looks somewhat interesting. Now it might suck. I don't know. We'll see. As far as the Shia thing, so is the claim he was fired from this movie?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I saw something like that on Twitter, but I didn't read about it. Yeah, the feud just does kind of seem, and actually she's kind of someone Warner's is going to have to watch what they do in general, because she's got the Shia thing that's going right now, and then plus the thing with her ex-husband.
Ted Lasso.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, with stuff coming out on her with that there was, I think, an article, at least a rumor, who knows, that definitely did not put her in a very good light at all in that situation. And then I saw another rumor actually that the star of the movie, what's her name, Florence Pugh, is aggravated with her and doesn't want to do stuff with her for the movie either. So it kind of feels like a big PR disaster, to be honest. I mean, it may want to be one of those movies they honestly just kind of put in theaters and don't advertise much for, because honestly, it's not going to bring in a lot of money probably anyway. So just kind of I don't know. I probably wouldn't invest a lot of money in marketing for that movie.
I'm just trying to figure out what movie you guys are actually talking about right now. I'm completely lost.
Exactly. That's the point. So Michelle, I also wanted to get your take on, what do you think from the information from this article and this move of pushing them back? What is your prediction for how Warner Brothers is going to be handling the DCEU going forward?
Well, everything I've seen about how this guy has handled things seems to be pretty, and then what you guys are saying with him with Discovery, he seems to know what he's doing. And, I remember him speaking at the meeting and him talking about the three main characters, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Like, they really got to get these right. So I don't know what they'll do with a soft reboot, which sucks, because I really would like a really well-written third Wonder Woman movie, that's back to form to the first one, because I think Gal is such a perfect casting for Wonder Woman. I would love to see another Henry Cavill Superman movie, because good Lord, they're male and female equivalents of one another. They're perfect for the role physically. So I hope he just kind of recalibrates a little. And I actually have hope, because DC's been a disaster and Warner's has seemingly been a disaster. I think this guy, he kind of offers me hope on multiple fronts, not just for DC and Warner Brothers. But I mean, if he succeeds, I think, how do some of the other companies not look at what he's done and say, oh, this, this wokes, all this stuff doesn't work, but this being business minded actually does work and bring
I
us
don't know if
luck.
they care. Like, oh, we should look at the numbers too and make decisions based
I
on.
know.
We should do that. We want to make money too. I don't know.
But I think honestly, I think it sounds fairly promising with this guy. So I'm cautious. I'm kind of optimistic about where this could go.
So Cameron, what do you
Mhm.
think from a studio perspective here,
Mhm.
where people are saying like, oh, they only have enough money to release 3 more movies in the 4 months that are left out of the year? Do you think there's anything to this with like, because they did take a big hit with like Batgirl and stuff like that, but do you think that people are reading a little bit too much into this? Like, what's your expert take from being inside the industry?
Yeah, I think Tom is right. I think it's a choice more than economics, right? I think that Zaslav is looking at the crap that's on their slate and going, because it's all stuff he inherited. It's like, all right, well, what
Right.
do we do with this stuff, right? And so it's not useful here. Well, get into development, get me some better stuff than this, right? And so I think his goal right now with the stuff that's on his plate is just to minimize loss rather than maximize profit at this point. That's one of the things he thought. I guess he decided Batgirl is going to bring us a bigger loss, and I don't want to deal with that. I think that's where he is. Look, it's going to take a while for this newly merged company to be financially stable in the eyes of Wall Street. I mean, because any change like that is always uncertainty, and investors are always afraid of uncertainty. But I do believe, as Michelle said, he's on the right track. I believed that for over a year when I heard he was going to do this. I just knew this guy knew what he was doing from being a Discovery fan myself, and so I think in a couple of years, Warner's is going to be in a very strong position. And the great thing about David Zaslav is that he's different from Bob Chapek. Bob Chapek is an employee of that company. He's a 30-year employee that has to answer to the board, has to answer to the legal department. Everyone's like, why hasn't he fired this person yet? It's like, because the legal department's like, look, if this person has this kind of contract, they could sue us for discrimination. And so he's got to play all these shenanigans to get what he wants done. David Zaslav is Genghis Khan. He's basically an entrepreneur that created Discovery, and he came in and he seized Warner Brothers against its will.
Yeah.
Right. He took it like taking Baghdad by Genghis Khan. Right.
It seems like
So this guy's got a lot of power, and he does not care. He
Yeah.
does not care what the trades say about him, because he knows he's got all the power here. So
Right.
that's the thing that really is upsetting the Hollywood club, is this guy just doesn't care because he didn't come from them. He didn't come from the aristocratic world that Ann Sarnoff, whose uncle founded CBS, right? I mean, that's the aristocratic world of these people that are third generation heirs who didn't build Hollywood like their grandparents or granduncles did.
Right.
But he's this new kind. He's like the Jack Warner from the 1930s, right? He's that guy, and that's always a threat.
Yeah, and I'd argue that AT&T so mismanaged Warner Media that he's got a lot of stuff to clean up from their mistakes. Vader, was there something you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, it seems like he's kind of has a plan going into this, right? I mean, didn't they just hire? I think I saw something on Twitter about them hiring like their a new guy to guide the superhero DC universe, right? I'm not sure who it was, but I did see something about.
Was that Dan Lin? I know his name was being thrown around.
I think so. Yep. About I'm very optimistic about the future of the DC movie superhero universe. I hope they get it straightened out. And like Michelle said, I do want to see Henry Cavill as Superman again. I want to see a really good new Wonder Woman movie. That's a moneymaker right there, right? Everybody wants to see those two things, especially Cavill back in that Superman suit. So
oh God,
why they aren't doing that? Why it's not just like, why they aren't throwing $50 million at Henry Cavill to make a Superman movie is beyond me, because
I think they are. I think they actually
No, they
are.
are. The agents are asking for $75 million. That's what's
Oh
happening.
my God.
Yeah.
That's
That's
crazy.
negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah. Every
All
time they
right.
offer more, the agents are like, well, I think we're going to go higher.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So one more get woke, go broke story, which is the spectacular failure of the Saints Row reboot. Now, I know we tend to talk about movies and TV on the stream, but this is a video game thing. And for those of you who aren't in the know, Saints Row is kind of like a poor man's Grand Theft Auto.
Yep.
It's a open world crime game where you can run around and blow stuff up and murder people willy nilly.
You jackass.
And basically, there were
Wish.com's Grand Theft Auto.
yeah, there were 4 entries into the Grand Theft Auto franchise before they decided to do a reboot, which is basically they're erasing all the lore from the last 4 games and kind of like starting anew. And the game came out recently, and it's been just getting blasted by reviewers and fans and all this stuff. And so one of the issues is that the production company, that video game company, development company that made this game, went woke with it. Not like full woke, but they went woke enough where they upset the fan base, in addition to basically having terrible writing and tons of bugs upon release. But one of the interesting things in this Den of Geek article is that they talk about the reboot being too woke. And basically what they said was that a lot of the humor and stuff that made the first couple games in the franchise very popular was too offensive and doesn't gel with modern audiences, especially gaming audiences. And so what they did was they scaled back the more tasteless stuff. So for instance, when you go in to rob a store, you can't shoot the store clerk and murder them. You can only rob them. There's a whole section of the game that recreated the Las Vegas Strip, but you can't go into any of the casinos and gamble because gambling's bad. And there are no slurs against women or minorities in the game. And so they basically took a lot of the edgier stuff that people love from these open world crime games and basically said, you can't do that. And in addition to that, they also filled it with, so the main characters in this game are a crew of mercenaries / bank robbers and mass murderers who are trying to earn enough money to pay back their student loans. That's not a joke.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
And basically, it's been widely panned for having a terrible storyline.
Oh my god!
And in addition to game-breaking bugs left and right. So I wanted to talk a little bit because we did a story on a few episodes back about Grand Theft Auto 6 going woke as well. And if this is a kind of sign of things to come, it doesn't bode well for the video game industry. So I wanted to get everyone's take on this. Matt Vader, you're a gamer. What's your take on the disastrous release of Saints Row, the reboot?
So full disclosure, I've never played these games. Okay. I've dabbled, I've spent, here and there a few minutes here, a few minutes there, but people play video games to escape. They play video games to have fun, to live lives that they aren't able to live in the real world. Now, I'm not saying it's healthy or not to go out and beat hookers up with bats and carjack cops and
yes, it is.
Do all this crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
But you know what? It just seems silly to me. People buy these games for a reason. They buy these games because they want to do stupid, crazy, weird stuff. It's just, and in the end, all that's going to happen with these companies is they're not going to sell any copies of their game. The Grand Theft Auto game is not going to do well. It's going to severely underperform because they're changing what makes these games fun to the people that play them.
I disagree, actually, because most people aren't in the know, bro. So they're gonna buy the game. They love the franchise. They're gonna buy the game, and then
there's gonna be a massive return binge after. There's gonna be a lot of
return games, bro.
Well, there's gonna be a lot of them in GameStop. There's gonna be shelves full of, of Grand Theft Auto 4 because people are gonna be mad, and the blowback is gonna be epic when the normies figure out what's going on.
The normies are going to get in there and be like, "What is this?"
Yeah. And it won't take long. It won't take long for the people that don't keep up with this stuff to figure it out, and it will underperform. I guarantee you, both these games will.
So Brian, apparently in this open world crime game where you're supposed to be able to commit crimes, you can't kill any women or people of color NPCs. If you shoot them, they just walk it off. Um, and the game breaking bugs are so bad that people literally can't get past 10 hours into the game without just quitting. So
Yeah.
what do you think? Will the gaming industry ever learn that when you bow to Anita Sarkeesian, you never make a winning game?
Oh, Anita Sarkeesian, bring on the Gamergate. No, they're not, man. Well, no, that's not true. I think that it's been a thing now. These games that come out that are really just hyper woke and garbage, they underperform to the point where either the company is stops making those games, or it's a big company that has to pivot into other things. Or if they're like Blizzard and they just sort of like go down with the ship, which was a really weird decision on their part. So I think that what's going to happen is I think GTA 6 will be purchased by the normies that don't know that it's completely, like they're changing everything. And there's going to be a lot of blowback. I think it's going to be horrible. And I think that there's going to be a lot of DLC content that modifies the game to get regular people. I mean, let's be real. Because like we're in this world now with games in particular where you can release a game that is literally just a demo of the game you purchased, and then over time release content and updates to fix problems or to add the content back in, that people wanted. And Mass Effect Andromeda. I was a huge Mass Effect fan, and I went out of my way to purchase that game. And it was one of the worst games I've ever played not because the story was woke, and which it was, or the character creation was woke, which it was. I couldn't even get out of the spawn point. It was so riddled with bugs. It took 3 days before an update came that got me to the next portion of the game, which that was so broke I couldn't get. And I paid $65 for this game. So we're getting to the point where most gaming companies sort of do whatever they want and still succeed, except for completely ruined franchises that are ingrained. When that happens, the company usually has to make hard pivots, or they have to change it. And again, you can change games now a year after they've been released with DLC. So
Michelle, I know that you're not a very huge gaming person.
No.
But one of the interesting things about this to me is that one of the criticisms we have for like movies and TV shows is that they don't seem to understand who they're making this stuff for, like their audience. And gamers, by and large, don't tend to be very like socially conscious, like politically correct people. And when gaming companies make like there was an issue, I think it was a Call of Duty game where like they couldn't use the word Nazi in a World War II game. Like you're fighting the axis of evil or something like that instead of Nazis. So like when you get to the point where like the video game company that's making the game is so woke that there's a mismatch with the audience that they're actually making the game for, and then they wonder why it fails, and they just blame the audience for being a bunch of racist bigots or like whatever.
Right.
Do you think that video game companies, in addition to Hollywood, need to start waking up and realizing, hey, we have a demographic we need to cater to?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think with everything, like you have to know your audience. And in this case, it would be different if this was the first game, one of these games, but when it's not, people are going to get it and be like, well, I can't do these things I used to do. So it's not the best business move. As we've said throughout this whole show, basically choosing to put in what they want over what the audience wants, that's never going to work out too well.
Indeed. Cameron,
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest criticisms levied at Saints Row, the reboot, has been the writing. I just watched a Skill Up's review before the stream because he's one of the best video game reviewers out there, in my opinion. And he goes deep into why the story is so bad. And it was basically, he was like, it felt like this was written by a bunch of millennials who had never taken an English course. And when he highlighted some of the dialogue between the core group of main characters, it was cringy to the extreme. Like my muscles would convulse while I was hearing it. Why do you think? Why do you think it's so hard for young writers to actually craft something that's good, especially for video games? Because video games is like a whole other skill set when it comes to writing than novels or TV shows or what have you.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not a gamer, but I have written one game that was successful. I wrote 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, the sequel to the 50 Cent first game. And the reviews were that people were saying, how did that crappy first game lead to a really good, well-written second game, right? It was because I wrote it, right? And so I'll take credit for that. But, it's broad. Let me talk broadly and then talk specifically about what you're saying, okay? So broadly, the problem we're facing in video games, I think, at this moment is similar to the problem we're facing with a lot of books, particularly books that are being made out of Disney Star Wars books, right? This it takes several years to get something like this made in production, having been through the process myself, right? It takes a while to get these things through the writing stage and the actual filming, the animatic stage, and all that stuff, right? So a lot of this stuff was conceived at a time when a certain gentleman was president and people were very agitated and felt the need to make social commentary. That's true. And then they thought the world was on their side based on a misreading of social media representing, the general public. And so that's, I think, the phenomenon behind that we're experiencing now. And now we're seeing a lot of these things coming and being stillborn because they were conceived in a different environment and they're being born in a different environment. And that process will continue, and which is a good thing because, like I said, economics will push this kind of stuff out of the market that people don't want. Even if one finds that particular game a little distasteful, the public has a right to buy it or not buy it, and they're going to make their decision, right? And so now going to the specifics of young people, it's a problem that I will use the analogy of what we're going through in Hollywood. Like I mentioned on the screenwriter boards, a lot of the top writers, we're talking about people a lot more famous than me, right? Like on there talking about how nervous they are about hiring young people now for writers' rooms because one of the most interesting things that got people very agitated was one showrunner was sharing how essentially they were having difficulty firing a bad writer because the writer was a young kid, 25 years old, and was the kind of person that would, you fire me, I'm going to claim racism, I'm going to claim this, I'm going to claim bigotry of some kind, right? And it's not just because they couldn't do the job, right? And they had like a cabal of other young writers on Twitter that were all of the same. They've got their identity defense against being canned, right? So, and as a result of that, what's happening is showrunners are now like, I'm just not going to hire these young kids anymore after my bad experience. So we're actually getting this whole, literally entire generation of writers that's going to be winnowed down. And it's a tragedy because there are good writers amongst them. I've mentored young writers. They often feel like they are surrounded by a mob of incompetent buffoons, but who are using identity to advance themselves. But ultimately, economics is winning out. We got to make the show, and having troublemakers in the room just makes it everyone's life difficult. And so that process will continue. But that's why we've seen that in the gaming thing as well as in books and in television. We just had a generation that was drunk on power, drunk on perceived power that wasn't real, and now it's facing the economic force. Someone like a David Zaslav and even David and Bob Chapek to the degree that he can is a wrecking ball coming against that because economics are, these companies are going to go bankrupt if they continue to allow incompetent young people to dominate them out of fear. And so that's the process, and it's going to be a painful process to get those characters out because you got 5 or 6 years with them in the system.
So Tom, one of the weird recurring things here is that every time a video game studio changes their game to make it more politically correct, whenever they hire Anita Sarkeesian to come in and consult on the development of a video game, inevitably when these games are released, they're huge failures, and yet they keep kind of falling into the same trap over and over again. Why do you think that is, and is there any hope for the video game industry going forward?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the video game industry was kind of like with the comic, because this whole woke thing took over with like the comic book industry first, and then the video game industry had started seeing it kind of creep in, movies on this side. I mean, as far as these games go, a lot of these look at what they dealt with what was The Last of Us 2 and some of the other stuff. I mean, pretty much that's what they're setting themselves up for. people are very fickle when it comes to gameplay, and if they're not into something, they're not going to play it. I mean, we recently heard that new Saints Row flopped. I don't know if you guys just brought that up at all recently here, but
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Like that whole thing is just. Well, I heard the GTA thing, so I thought we were going into that. But like regardless, it's just one of those things that sooner or later they're going to learn that this stuff doesn't make any money. And I'm not a big gamer, so I can't comment too much on it. But I have played like the GTA games and stuff like that. And the whole appeal of those games is that you can do whatever the hell you want, and you're not like confined to the real world, right? Like, so the last thing I think most people are going to want is real world progressive bullshit all over their video games. I mean, sure, if you want to go out there and make a crazy character, that's great. But when it comes to a storyline for GTA, the last thing I'm worried about is, social justice. I'm more worried about what bank am I going to fucking, try to rob this week or whatever, what am I going to blow up this time? Or what
Are we
cool
going to kill
thing
some
can I do?
prostitutes this week?
Yeah, exactly. How many prostitutes can I kill and steal their money from before?
So you're not-
four in my trunk.
So you're not worried about the male gaze in video games?
Let's be real. Going back to like we just said with HBO Max, a big majority of game players are male.
Yeah,
Right.
listen, I play a character in GTA that pretty much doesn't have clothes on. So.
And to be honest, going back to all these other things, a lot of times what women are fans of these things, what appeals to them is the same things that appeal to the men, right? So once you start changing all these things, you're appealing to no one. I mean, usually if a woman wants to play a girly game, she'll go play a girly game. But if she wants to play GTA, she wants to fucking play GTA, right? I mean, asking the woman on the panel here, she just nodded her head. I don't even think I have to. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
All right. Well, guys, we talked about a lot of stuff today, and I want to thank you all for your wonderful opinions. But it's time to wrap up because Lord knows we've got lives we got to get back to. So I'm going to go around the panel and have you guys tell us where we can find out more about you and any final thoughts that you might have. Tom Connors from Midnight's Edge, thank you so much for being on with us today. You have any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I was just distracted there at the end there, so I didn't hear the whole conversation. I feel bad about that. So I didn't have much to add to that. But no, you guys know where you can find me. Midnight's Edge After Dark, here, there, and everywhere, doing this, that, and the other. And as usual, thank you for having me. I love hanging out with you guys. So
Yeah, we always love it when you come on, Tom. You obviously add a certain amount of expertise to the panel that we always appreciate.
Well, my track record's been pretty good lately, so I can't deny that. So yeah.
You're also spinning a lot of really terrible music on your radio station, right?
Terrible.
Terrible. Kamran Pasha, good to see you again, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts on the topics that we talked about today, and where can people find out more about you?
Well, the final thought I'm going to give is a general thing, to which is that don't lose hope, people. Things are changing. We are in the middle of a process of change because we've been through essentially a war. It feels like we've been through World War II since The Last Jedi, of just, and Ghostbusters 2016. And really, we can date it starting 2016. So it's been 6 years of a really bad situation that we're coming out of. I can tell you, as someone working there, the conversations inside of Hollywood are changing. The conversations amongst lefty screenwriters are changing. People are tired of the wokey stuff. They're just tired of losing money to it. They're tired of being held hostage to it. There is an internal change happening. It is a slow process that's accelerating now with someone like a David Zaslav, and to a smaller degree with Bob Chapek. But it's going to be a process. It's going to be a fight. But don't give up hope. We really are. All the stuff you were complaining about has been heard, and the dollar spoke. And so now, hang on. There's still going to be some crap you're going to watch you're not going to like for the next couple of years, but better stuff is coming. It's already in the works. We're already seeing some of it. So if anyone wants to follow me to get my perspectives and my often crazy predictions that come true, come join me on my Patreon. I don't know if you have a link to it, Matt, but
we do. It's in the description.
Great. And so, yeah, on my Patreon, we've got a few hundred subscribers now, and it's a very active community. And we actually have several members of Patreon who are Disney employees who like to remain anonymous, but they send me DMs with like, oh, here's an internal memo. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I'm actually getting breaking information on there that I'm really, it's just the community has provided it. And so it's wonderful. So come join me there. And thank you, Matthew. I mean, hopefully one day I'll come back on and do an anniversary for our Birds of Prey say that we did together.
Yeah, special edition. That's right. So Michelle, I'm really glad that you stuck around because I was feeling very unsafe with Natalie present. But
it's red.
Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share, and where can people find out more about you and your sister?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just will say thank you for having me on. We're big fans of the Salty Nerd podcast. But yeah, you can find us at Force of Light Entertainment on YouTube, also on Twitter and Instagram. And we just put out our first time watching reaction of Karate Kid, actually.
Oh, wow.
Neither one of us had seen it. We thoroughly enjoyed the movie. And
Very good.
yes, it is. And go check that out. We also just recorded ourselves watching for the first time Nightmare on Elm Street and Back to the Future.
Is that out?
No, that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks.
Are you guys just
wow.
going
I
down my
love that
favorite
movie.
film list or what?
Are we?
It seems like it.
That's good. See, we're trying to hit some good
If
ones.
Jaws is next and Ninja Turtles, then yeah.
Man,
So-
I wish we've already seen Jaws, or that would be
okay,
awesome.
well, I'm glad.
But yes, check us out at Force of Light Entertainment.
And the link to their YouTube channel is in the description. Brian from the Popcast, any final thoughts, and where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, final thoughts are, if you haven't seen a movie, then you have no reason. You can't say it's the worst thing you've ever seen, for obvious reasons. If you haven't seen a TV show, you can't say, "Oh, that TV show sucks. I'm not even gonna give it to me." We got to stop doing that, because I think Cameron's right. I think we are sort of turning into the same people that we criticize. If you haven't seen it, then you can say, "I don't want to give it the time of day because other people other people I know said it wasn't good." But you can't say, "Oh, it's not good. It's horrible. I can't. I'm going to review something I haven't seen." It makes no sense to me. We've been doing that a lot lately. I'm seeing that a lot across the YouTube community that we're in, and it's sort of weird. Again, it hasn't come out yet. You haven't seen it, or it has come out. You haven't seen it. If you haven't given it a single minute of your time, then you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing said franchise. So
Agreed.
And that's it. You can find me at the Popcast on YouTube, Popcast Live, and the regular Popcast. And I just put out an Orville video. And if you're an Orville fan, you might not be too stoked about it, but you should go watch it.
Brian,
You watched it and you came to an opinion. That's fair.
Bingo.
Brian, congratulations on 100,000. I know that was a couple weeks ago.
Thank you,
but
sir.
Still, it's great.
Thank you.
Very happy about that.
Right. Matt Vader 74, final thoughts, and where can
Final thoughts. I don't know. I'm not a big thinker, dude. I just want to thank Tom, as always, for coming on and hanging out with us without, being prompted to at the start. Cameron, it was awesome having you on the show. I mean, it was really cool having you here. I know I've seen you on Tom's show and tons of other things a lot, and it's really nice for you to have you here. And Natalie and Michelle, Force of Light, awesome to have you here, Michelle. Glad.
Thank you.
See that your redheaded freak sister couldn't hang out, but she probably had to go to one of those ginger take over the planet meetings. My wife goes to those all the time.
She did.
So,
it was promptly at 1:45. Yeah, she
yeah.
had to go.
They had to telepathically connect through their weird little network.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Weirdos.
thank you for being here. What do we got coming up, Matt? We got
So we're going to start
Tremors
talking
week,
about
right?
Yeah, we're going to start talking about the Rings of Power on this show when it premieres next month. But next week, we've got Tremors Week on the Salty Nerd podcast, where we review Tremors 1, 2, and 3. So that's a lot of fun. We're also starting our coverage of C Season 3, and we've got a couple interviews with the actors from that show coming forward. And every Monday, we're doing a breakdown of the previous night's House of the Dragon. So we got tons of stuff on our slate, and we really appreciate everyone in the chat who showed up, participated, and especially those of you who sent us super chats. We're really trying hard to go full time with YouTube and the podcast, and so every little bit helps. us get to that going. We really appreciate it. And maybe Cameron will even share some of his tips for creating a profitable Patreon, because we're still struggling with that. But I want to thank everyone on our expert panel. You guys are awesome. And until next week, everyone, stay salty, my friends.